Right.
Okay, here we go. Nothing more. Nothing, no more. No more. Okay, right.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Okay. Rabbi's here going off. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, it's a delight to be here. It is a tremendous honor to be talking about Rabbi Sacks this evening to you all. He was my teacher, mentor. I had the honor and privilege of knowing him personally, of speaking to him many times. I didn't have tremendous amount of contact with him over the past 10 years since I've been in the US. He passed away in 2020, but for the time that I left the UK until I didn't have a tremendous amount to do with him. But in that time, from 2013 onwards, his reputation and impact became worldwide. I mean, people had heard of him beforehand. He certainly was a known figure, but the impact that he had, especially in North America, it really rose tremendously after he stepped down as being a chief rabbi. What I'd like to do is to start off with just an introductory video, which our organization, the Rabbi Sacks Legacy, made a number of years ago. I thought I'd share that with you. So here goes. Let's see if we can do this. Let's see if we can do this. Okay, and I'm going to turn the computer around so you can see it. Hopefully you can both see and hear. Okay. What we don't want is for my emails to pop up, then nothing much I can do about that.
Through his writings, sermons, and broadcasts, Rabbi Sacks touched the lives of countless people with his unfailing wisdom, with his profound sanity, and with a moral conviction, which, in a confused and confusing world, was all too rare.
On the 8th of March 1948, Jonathan Sacks was born in London to parents who instilled in him the values that would mark out the template of his life: concern for members of his community, aspiration for knowledge, love of culture, and fierce pride in being Jewish. Rabbi Lord Jonathan Sacks sought to demonstrate how the best of Western thought could enhance our understanding of Judaism, and how Jewish values could help to repair the fractures in our society. For 22 years as Chief Rabbi of Great Britain and the Commonwealth, and in the years that followed, Rabbi Sacks's impact was felt far beyond the Jewish community. Advisor and friend to global leaders, he was a moral voice in the modern world, teaching the dignity of difference and the power that faith communities can achieve when they work together.
The nation is strong when it cares for the weak, that it becomes rich when it cares for the poor. It becomes invulnerable when it cares about the vulnerable. That is what makes great nations.
As a teacher of Torah, he was profoundly admired and deeply respected. Penning 40 books in his lifetime, publishing the first new translation and commentary of the Siddur in a generation, and creating a full suite of commentaries on the weekly Torah reading, he was as prolific as he was insightful.
I want to say to Jews around the world, take it, cherish it, learn to understand and to love it. Carry it, and it will carry you. And may you, in turn, pass it on to future generations. For you are a member of an eternal people, a letter in their scroll. Let their eternity live on in you.
A leader of leaders, his personality, sense of humor, and an extraordinary gift of public speaking came together in complete harmony. He was regarded at the highest level on whichever stage he stood, and left behind words and teachings that will be his everlasting legacy.
We need to restate the moral and spiritual dimensions in the language of the 21st century to inspire, to give hope, and to unite.
After his passing, the Rabbi Sacks Legacy Trust was established to promote the timeless and universal wisdom of Rabbi Sacks as a teacher of Torah, a moral voice, and a leader of leaders.
It's hard to lead a nation of individuals, but this is the most challenging, empowering, inspiring leadership of all.
And so I've seen this video many times, but for me, and maybe for you as well, it's just hearing him speak and hearing his voice and hearing how he phrased things. I never ceased to be amazed at how he could do it. That was his genius. I mean, there are many, and we're going to talk more about who he was and why he was so special. But that's just one of his geniuses. Can they see me online? I'm sharing my screen now. Can you see?
Oh.
Can you see me?
Can they see you in addition to the screen?
Yeah.
Let's see. You're kind of
Okay,
just a
fine.
little bit-
But if I can do this all together,
Yeah.
it's gonna be challenging. But okay.
Yeah. You know.
Okay, here we go.
Oh,
So this is me. This is me and Rabbi Sacks. Can you see this? This is me. This is you talked about my master's degree. This is when I got my master's degree.
Yeah.
I love this photo, but someone recently pointed out to me that they could have had a nicer background. But anyway, but that was the important thing was me and Rabbi Sacks. He was wearing the colorful garments. I was wearing the yellow ones. I've known Rabbi Sacks since I was a teenager. And in fact, if you've read A Letter in the Scroll, have anybody of you come across that? Letter in the Scroll? I would recommend, if you want to read one book from Rabbi Sacks, I would recommend Letter in the Scroll. We're going to see the last chapter. We're going to look at the last chapter right now in a few moments. But at the beginning of the Letter in the Scroll, he tells a story that he was speaking to some students about a project they should do. And the students asked him what they should do. And he said, why don't you write to Jewish leaders around the world asking the following question: why should I be Jewish? Why should I be Jewish? Which is the topic of our conversation. And I was one of those students. I was working for the Union of Jewish Students at the time, which is like HaLev, but student run. So I was 22, and we ran this organization basically on our own. And we looked after the students across the UK. And what we wanted to do was that year, we knew that Pesach and semester fell at the same time, probably a bit like this year, when it's very late. So semester time, often Easter and spring break, and often Pesach often coincide. But like this year, it was in term time or semester time. So we produced a Haggadah. We wanted to have an additional project, which became, why am I a Jew? One of the letters that we wrote to all sorts of people, political leaders, religious leaders, intellectuals, one of the people we wrote to was perhaps one of the most prominent academics in the UK at the time, a man named Sir Isaiah Berlin. I don't know if any of you have heard of Sir Isaiah Berlin. He was it's a really important political thinker, historian, political thinker, a professor at Oxford, originally a Lithuanian Jew, has come over to the UK and become one of the most prominent intellectuals. He wrote back a simple letter saying, why am I a Jew? Along the lines, he said, I'm a Jew because that's who I am, in the same way that I have 2 arms and 2 legs. And that's who I am. That's how I'm a Jew. It's just an intrinsic part of me. Now, we thought this was amazing. One of the top philosophers, historians, intellectuals was writing back to us. Rabbi Sacks hated the letter. That's not why he should be a Jew. And in response, he writes a book. So I'm in that introduction. So I'm very proud of that. I secretly think he wanted to write the book anyway. So you're gonna hear some of that, some of the things that he wrote in that book. What was amazing about him was, as brilliant as he was, and he truly was,
I'm sorry, Rabbi Bruce. People are saying that your voice is moving a little bit in and out. Well, so this is, I don't know. We tried the mic before and it didn't pick up at all. So
okay,
we have this tension of
okay. If I speak this way, can you hear me?
Is that? See, someone just wrote a message. Better. Yep.
Okay. I don't know how I do
Can you
this.
closed caption it? I mean, is there?
Oh, I don't know.
Oh,
But if his voice is going. Yeah. Well,
okay.
There is a way to do that, isn't there?
There is. I don't know how to do it. I've never closed caption. Does someone know how to close caption? No.
Captions.
Oh.
English. Okay. I don't know. I don't know. I have no idea if this is captions. Captions. Show captions.
Oh yeah.
English. Save. Okay,
Okay. Yep.
let's see if this
Great.
works. No,
Okay.
we're gonna try. This is great. This is like a technology lesson. Okay, I'm gonna
Yeah.
I'm gonna speak. I'm gonna see, how's that? I'm gonna speak here and to you. Okay. I don't know. I don't even know where the microphone is on this computer. No. So you know what? I'll just when I want to show you things, I'm gonna move things around. If I like, can you hear me? Can they hear me fine?
That's
Okay, fine. So what was I saying? What I was saying was that an intellectual brilliant as he was, and that the amazing thing about Rabbi Sacks was that he gave time to people. So normally people who are that sought after, and you saw in that video, like Prince Charles as he was then, King Charles, Tony Blair, Gordon Brown, like the leaders of the UK, royalty, they genuinely had a close friendship with Rabbi Sacks. And yet, let me tell you a story. When I was a young rabbi, back at the start of my career, as in synagogues, there's sometimes issues that come up, you know, Rabbi. So, and I can't remember what the issue was, didn't matter. I wanted to speak to Rabbi Sacks, who was the chief rabbi at the time. And I called up his office and I said, can I speak to the chief rabbi? Expecting to get a response, a meeting the following week, a call, whatever. 10 minutes later, I got a call on my cell phone. You know, those days, 20 years ago, those blocky cell phones. I still had a cell phone. I got 10 minutes later, hello, Jeremy, it's Chief Rabbi. And I was like, for me, I don't recall what he told me and what I asked him. I just recall the fact that he had the time, or he organized his schedule that he could be available to young rabbis in his care. And that was important to him. But let me show you something else. It's another side to him as well. Not a great photo, but can you see it? This is my son, Gavi. He's now almost 20. Doesn't look like this at all. He was very cute in those days. This was him at kindergarten, preschool. Rabbi Sacks was visiting one day. And my son, unlike today, he was pretty confident young man. He was like 3 or 4 here. And I don't know how he knew. But Chief Rabbi walks in, Rabbi Sacks walks in, and he pipes up, you know my dad. And then Rabbi Sacks said, yes, I do. Now, I don't know how he knew. Either someone told him, or they tell me that he looks exactly like me. So either way, he knew. He said, this project is what happened next. He said, he bent down. He said, come, let's take a photo and send it to your parents. So for me, and this is a tiny, small gesture, but like the man wasn't up in the clouds, as you might imagine. He had enough presence of mind and care to do that. And so this is, well, the original with my mother, of course. And, you know, but we photocopied it, and it doesn't matter. This represents a very important part of our history. Okay. One last thing here. Again, sorry that you probably can't see this, but I don't really know him very well, but have you heard of Tim Ferriss? So Tim Ferriss is a podcaster, and Rabbi Sacks went on a podcast with Tim Ferriss during COVID, I think in August of 2020. So remember lockdown, remember that time we were all in our homes. Rabbi Sacks did a number of things. One of the things he did here was went on this podcast. It's an American show. And you can't see it so well, but those of you at the home can probably read it, the transcript here. Tim Ferriss asked him why he was always wearing yellow ties. So since 2016, he only wore yellow ties, right? Why? Because he said, I have no idea what happened in 2016, but something happened in 2016. And he said in 2016, the world feels like it's falling apart. And my job as a rabbi is to bring joy and happiness to the world. So I thought I used to wear silver ties, but now I should wear yellow ties to bring sunshine and happiness to the world. And again, for me, that's like, oh, who thinks that way? Who thinks that way? But, and also writes 40 books. So that's my introduction. We could speak all night about him and his characteristics. I run one of my programs that I run is called the Sacks Scholars. So the Sacks Scholars, you might imagine, is all about scholarship and his work, which it is. But we also talk about his midot, his character traits, like this. And he really was a humble man. He clearly knew how impactful he was. But that didn't mean that he put himself forward the whole time. In fact, he was quite shy and was not comfortable putting himself forward at all. He did what he had to do, what he could do. But this is an amazing, amazing man. Okay, so we're going to do this again. I'm going to try and show you. Should we give the handout sound? Yeah. So if everyone can, if you can, look at the handouts and look at source number 2, because you can follow along in the handouts, the transcript of what we're going to see, why I am a Jew. This is, to my mind, so if you look on the first page, this is, to my mind, one of the most brilliant encapsulations of Jewish philosophy ever written. And obviously it's very contemporary, but the way that Rabbi Sacks encapsulates this is the last paragraph, the last chapter of this book that I told you, Letter in the Scroll, the way that he encapsulates the ideas of what it means to be a Jew is astonishing. Let's see if we can watch it together.
I am here to tell you today that your feelings are valid. Your trauma is valid. Your hurt is your hurt.
Why I am a Jew. The deepest question any of us can ask is, who am I? To answer it, we have to go deeper than where do I live or what do I do? The most fateful moment in my life came when I asked myself that question and knew the answer had to be, I am a Jew. This is why. I'm a Jew not because I believe that Judaism contains all there is of the human story. I admire other traditions and their contributions to the world. Nor am I a Jew because of anti-Semitism or anti-Zionism. What happens to me does not define who I am. Ours is a people of faith, not fate. Nor is it because I think that Jews are better than others, more intelligent, creative, generous, or successful. It's not Jews who are different, but Judaism. It's not so much what we are, but what we're called on to be. I'm a Jew because, being a child of my people, I have heard the call to add my chapter to its unfinished story. I'm a stage on its journey, a connecting link between the generations. The dreams and hopes of my ancestors live on in me, and I am the guardian of their trust, now and for the future. I'm a Jew because our ancestors were the first to see that the world is driven by a moral purpose, that reality isn't a ceaseless war of the elements to be worshipped as gods, nor history a battle in which might is right and power is to be appeased. The Judaic tradition shaped the moral civilization of the West, teaching for the first time that human life is sacred, that the individual may never be sacrificed for the mass, and that rich and poor, great and small, are all equal before God. I'm a Jew because I am the moral heir of those who stood at the foot of Mount Sinai and pledged themselves to live by these truths for all time. I'm the descendant of countless generations of ancestors who, though sorely tested and bitterly tried, remained faithful to that covenant when they might so easily have defected. I'm a Jew because of Shabbat, the world's greatest religious institution, a time in which there's no manipulation of nature or our fellow human beings, in which we come together in freedom and equality to create every week an anticipation of the Messianic age. I'm a Jew because our nation, though at times it suffered the deepest poverty, never gave up on its commitment to helping the poor or rescuing Jews from other lands or fighting for justice for the oppressed, and did so without self-congratulation, because it was a mitzvah, because a Jew could do no less. I'm a Jew because I cherish the Torah, knowing that God is to be found not just in natural forces, but in moral meanings, in words, texts, teachings, and commands, and because Jews, though they lacked all else, never ceased to value education as a sacred task, endowing the individual with dignity and depth. I'm a Jew because of our people's passionate faith in freedom, holding that each of us is a moral agent and that in this lies our unique dignity as human beings. And because Judaism never left its ideals at the level of lofty aspirations, but instead translated them into deeds which we call mitzvot, and a way which we call the halacha, and thus brought heaven down to earth. I am proud, simply, to be a Jew. I'm proud to be part of a people who, though scarred and traumatized, never lost their humor or their faith, their ability to laugh at present troubles and still believe in ultimate redemption, who saw human history as a journey and never stopped traveling and searching. I'm proud to be part of an age in which my people, ravaged by the worst crime ever to be committed against a people, responded by reviving a land, recovering their sovereignty, rescuing threatened Jews throughout the world, rebuilding Jerusalem, and proving themselves courageous in the pursuit of peace, no less than in defending themselves in war. I'm proud that our ancestors refused to be satisfied with premature consolations, and in answer to the question, has the Messiah come? Always answered, not yet. I'm proud to belong to the people Israel, whose name means one who wrestles with God and with man and prevails. For though we have loved humanity, we have never stopped wrestling with it, challenging the idols of every age. And though we have loved God with an everlasting love, we've never stopped wrestling with Him, nor He with us. I admire other civilizations and traditions, and believe each has brought something special into the world. Aval zeh shalanu. But this is ours. This is my people, my heritage, my faith. In our uniqueness lies our universality. Through being what we alone are, we give to humanity what only we can give. This then is our story, our gift to the next generation. I received it from my parents and they from theirs, across great expanses of space and time. There's nothing quite like it. It changed and still challenges the moral imagination of humankind. I want to say to Jews around the world, take it, cherish it, learn to understand and to love it. Carry it, and it will carry you. And may you, in turn, pass it on to future generations. For you are a member of an eternal people, a letter in their scroll. Let their eternity live on in you.
I'm going to stop sharing for the moment. See me here. Can everyone see me and hear me? Yeah, wonderful. So, exactly what that is, 8 minutes or so, or something like that. And I can tell you that tremendous amount of Rabbi Sacks' philosophy is contained in those paragraphs. And he's hinting at all sorts of themes that he wrote books on. In fact, towards the end there is what we're going to talk about next week. But before we go in and we dive into some of these ideas, any questions, and this applies online here, any thoughts or questions from what you just heard?
Dropping of aid into Gaza, the parachuting of aid, just some of that imagery, how poignant it is.
Right.
It's, why am I a Jew and how can I accept some of the things that are being said in my name?
It's a very tough time. It's a very, very conflicted time. Very difficult. Complicated.
And people here know how complicated it is for me with the son in Israel. and a son who, rants about colonization.
Yeah. And Rabbi Sacks, were he here, would somehow address it. For somehow. But he's not here, so it's up to us.
I was thinking about he goes to boarding school there, and he goes to Tonbridge School, and he's only one of 3 Jewish boys in the whole school. And I read this and I thought, I have to send this to him, because this is his way to fortify his own Jewishness and answer questions that are asked of him.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. And Rabbi Sacks wrote this. Sorry, I was just Rabbi Sacks wrote this because I think all of us here, and certainly people that are older than us, why be Jewish? Well, because we are. My parents were Jewish, and whatever, we're Jewish. This is. And there was no other way. I mean, essentially, this is the way it is. But that's not true anymore. So it hasn't been true since I was young, and certainly, possibly even before then. There has to be, in our generation, there has to be a reason why. Why are we doing this? Why are we struggling with these issues? Why not just give up? Wouldn't it be easier? America's a very welcoming place, right? And to be a Jew is hard. Just let's melt into the background and we can contribute. And why are we keeping up this fight? Well, Rabbi Sacks tells us why. And he wrote it now. He wrote it 20 years ago, but he wrote it around now because he understood that there's not enough just to say because. There has to be a deeper understanding. Yeah.
I have 5 great nieces and nephews. None. Okay. So 5 great nieces and nephews, none of whom have any concept that they're Jewish whatsoever. They all, the 2 nephew and niece married Jews. So, but I have a Seder every year, and I'm writing a Haggadah for them. I was trying, what can I say to them to have any concept at all that they have a connection to this, because they don't. They don't know that that an inheritance piece that we just got automatically.
Exactly.
They don't have.
Exactly.
So I'm going to incorporate some of this.
Please do.
Rabbi Bruce, could you summarize? I don't know if people are having a little bit of a hard time hearing the people.
So remember, your name is
Alan.
Sorry. Yeah. So Alan just pointed out that he has a number of nieces and nephews who are who are Jewish or have a Jewish and non-Jewish parent. They don't really have a natural connection to Judaism, and he's writing a Haggadah to try and give them some sense of their heritage. And he said that he's going to use some of this. I think it's a great idea. So any other points or questions? Okay, let's dive in. Can you at home, can you see the source sheets? Do you have access to the source sheets?
Yes.
You don't.
Oh.
We've you send them.
I put it in a link in the chat.
So if you want to go to the chat, you can see that.
I have to put it in again because if people joined after you put it in.
Yeah.
Okay, fine. Yeah.
Okay, just put it in again.
Okay, so it's in the chat. You go into the chat and you click on that link, you'll see the source sheets. Let's go to source 3. Where does Rabbi Sacks get? I mean, there are many things he said here, and I think he's gonna. I hope we're gonna give you some. I don't say answers, but gonna give you some strength. I hope we're gonna give you some strength tonight. Okay, so Judaism's role in the world. Let's look at 3. Judaism, uniquely, Jews are born into a faith. It chooses us before we choose it. Physically, we come naked into the world, but spiritually, we come with a gift, the story of our past, of our parents and theirs. For almost 40 centuries from the day Abraham and Sarah first heard the call of God and began their journey to a land, a promise, a destiny, and a vocation. That story is ours. It is a strange and moving story. It tells of how a family, then a collection of tribes, then a nation, were summoned to be God's ambassadors on earth. They were charged with building a society unlike any other, based not on wealth and power, but on justice and compassion, the dignity of the individual and the sanctity of human life. A society that would honor the world as God's work and human person as God's image. That was and is a demanding task. Yet Judaism remains a realistic religion. It assumed from the outset that transforming the world would take many generations. Hence the importance of handing on our ideals to the next generation. It takes many gifts, many different kinds of talent. Hence the importance of Jews as a people. None of us has all the gifts, but each of us has some. We all count. We each have a unique contribution to make. We come before God as a people, each giving something and each lifted by the contributions of others. And yes, at times we fail or fall short. Hence the importance of teshuvah, repentance, apology, forgiveness, rededication. Judaism is bigger than any of us, yet it is made by all of us. And though Jews were and are a tiny people, today a mere 0.5% of the population of the world, we have made a contribution to civilization out of all proportion to our numbers. To be a Jew is to continue the journey of our ancestors, to continue the journey our ancestors began, to build a world that honors the image of God in every human being, to be a part of a people summoned by God to be his ambassadors down here on earth. And so, like, as I'm reading this, I know, and I know you are as well. Like, we're in a really hard time. We've got to acknowledge this. We're in a really, really difficult time. A difficult time of existential threat, real existential threat, when we realized and we woke up on October 7th or October 8th, and we realized that pogroms were not a thing of the past. And at the same time, we watch the utter devastation and the awful pictures that we're getting from Gaza that are absolutely a direct result of the war. We're not going to seek to justify that. As a result of the war, terrible, terrible things are happening to innocent people. And so this role of a Jew as ambassadors and as role models, and it's hard to talk about that at this time. But, and I'm sorry just to come back to you again, but like, remind me your name again? Barbara. But what I was thinking is just like, within your family, you said you have different aspects of the Jewish people. Like, it was exactly what he just said there. Is that we all bring something different.
But I think it's that we are expected to do more than, I just wrote it down, more than just exist and reproduce.
Exactly.
We have to do something to improve the world, not just for ourselves, but for others. It's the tikkun.
Exactly. And I think
you repeat, I'm sorry.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
It's really profound. So it's really profound stuff. So Barbara said that what she's getting from this reading is that it's not just about existing and reproducing and that, we just need more Jews. No, there's a purpose for this. We have to fix things. We have to try and make a difference. And what I'm thinking about, and I'm just sharing this with you, and we've all got to be careful. This past week, I've actually had 4 or 5 conversations with different people around the world about how we're feeling about the war and about how difficult it is for us to, even amongst friends, to express our misgivings and doubts. So I'm being quite honest with you, and I've said, please don't quote me, but or maybe you can, I don't know, but like, we're all struggling. Many of us are struggling, and if we're not struggling, I think then we're in danger of losing our humanity. So I think the point here that Rabbi Sacks is trying to make is that we should struggle with this, and that the Jews who are demonstrating against the war and the Jews that are fighting in the war are doing very different things, but they're all part of the same people. And we've got to remember that. It's really easy to have them and us, even within our people, and we're part of the same people. Yes.
And goals that we have as a Jewish people, things that we do for good, and things that we do to help. People hate us just for being Jews,
Right.
just for being different, which is so ironic because is there anything here that says we want to control the world?
Right.
Whether we want to vanquish people?
Right.
Nothing. We are want to help the world.
Right.
And people
Right. Well, so remind me your name.
Susan.
Susan said, it's, you know, in short, we do such great things. Why do people hate us? But what are they? But I don't know how much I believe this, but I think there's an element of truth to this. Look, it doesn't make sense why the world media is so focused on Israel and Palestine and what's going on there, unless we represent something greater than the sum of our parts. That must be the answer to me. There is something supernatural about this. It's a backhanded compliment. You know, I wish they compared to some other terrible things that are going on in the world to the extent that they do with Israel, but that's not the case. And maybe that's because we do represent something greater. We represent God in some regards. That's our belief. Not nice to think that's why we get singled out, but there must be something supernatural, metaphysical there, as far as I understand it. Let's move on. Where does this come from? This comes from, if you look at source 4, at the very start of our history with Abraham and Sarah. The famous verse in Genesis, in Parashat Lech Lecha, God says to Abraham at the time, "Vayomer Hashem el Avram Lech Lecha me'atzeka me'lodtecha me'beit avika el ha'aretz asher areka." And the Lord said to Abraham, "Leave your country, your people, and your father's household, and go to the land I will show you. I will make you into a great nation, and I will bless you. I will make your name great, and you will be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, and whoever curses you, I will curse. And all the families on earth will be blessed through you." Okay, the Hebrew for that phrase is "V'nivrachu v'cha kol mishpachot adama." Through you, the world will be blessed. So we have this sacred task from the very start of our history as a nation to be a blessing to the world. From the very start, Rabbi Sacks points out that our role is not simply to exist behind literal or metaphorical ghetto walls. That is not our role. Our core role is to be a blessing to the world. And I think to a large extent, we've been that. We're not always appreciated for it, but I think we've succeeded to a large degree in all sorts of ways. Yes.
My name is Maxine. This is your answer. My opinion is that, you know, first of all, this is what the evangelicals look at as to why they support the Jews.
Right.
But also, it pretty much says you're better than anybody. So we're going to curse you. That says you're, you know, you base that and said, oh, you're trying to control the world, take over, because you think you're better than anyone else. And that may be why the hate is there.
But that's also the whole concept of chosenness. And are we chosen, or do we have a greater obligation? And I'd like to say, not that we're chosen, not that we're special in and of ourselves, but that we have taken on a responsibility that others may or may not have.
That's how we look at it.
Yep, but that's not
But
how
the others,
yeah.
use it against us.
So there's a discussion going on, a debate about chosenness now. We're going to be here for a very long time. Right, there's a discussion tonight about chosenness and about what does it mean to be a blessing and why we're hated. Or I do want to point something out. You know, we do get obsessed about how much everyone hates us. You do. The pictures of the demonstrations and the hundreds of thousands are very scary, but that's just deceptive. You should look at the opinion polls of which are much more representative. You know, 70-80% of the country is supportive. So everyone doesn't hate us. And Rabbi Sacks knew that. He thought it was really important that we continue to reach out to our non-Jewish friends and even those who have doubts and not, recoil in defensiveness. So I'd like to so this verse is really important. But the question is, and this really touches upon what you said again there, Barbara, which was, why are we chosen? Maybe we chose well. The classic question the commentators ask is, who is Abraham? Why was he chosen? Because although we learn about him slightly before God speaks to him, there is nothing special about him. He does nothing. He's described in no special way. Out of nowhere, God speaks to him and tells him to go somewhere. So the rabbis, as is their way, seek to fill in the gaps. And that's what Midrash is. Midrash is filling in the gaps. Right? One of the most famous Midrashim is the one that we're going to read now, source 5. I just want to check. I've been talking to everyone online. Has anyone got any questions or thoughts online? It's so easy to forget that you're here because you're so quiet. So, anyone online? Any thoughts or online? You can unmute yourself and if you want to contribute. Okay. Well, I tell you what. If you do want to, you can put your hand up. You can put the little hand up thing, and then the rabbi will see it, and then you'll say, or you'll look at the chat.
Or they can put in the chat.
You can put the chat. So do feel free to. Right. Okay. Fantastic. We're on source 5. Okay. Source 5, everyone. God said to Abraham, "Go forth from your land." So again, this is like the gap filler. It's asking the question, why on earth did God speak to Abraham? Rabbi Yitzchak opened. Listen, daughter, look and incline your ear and forget your people and your father's house. So Midrash always starts with quoting a verse. It's the classic idea of what is known as intertextuality, is that Midrash always weaves in the different parts of the Bible to answer questions. It's completely anachronistic. It will quote from things that happened many years later to answer questions, but it's all conceptual. So we're not going to, we could spend all night just analyzing this text. We're not going to do that. But just note, this verse is not there just randomly. Oh, that's a nice quote to put at the beginning. It's intrinsic to the whole idea of this Midrash. Rabbi Yitzchak said, this may be compared to a man who was traveling from place to place. When he saw a castle aglow, now I'm going to tell you what the Hebrew is in a second, potentially aglow or burning on fire. He said, is it possible that this castle lacks a person or a master to look after it? The owner of the building at that moment looked out at him and said, I am the master of the castle. What happened with Abraham, our father, was similar. He said, is it possible that this universe lacks a person to look after it? The Holy One, blessed be he, looked at him and said, I am the master of the universe. And let the king be aroused by your beauty, since he is your master. And let the king be aroused for your beauty in the universe and bow to him. Hence God said to Abraham, go forth. Okay, so this is the famous story of the burning castle. In Hebrew, it is called a bira achat doleket. Doleket. So in Hebrew, doleket, now modern Hebrew, means a light, a flame, right? But it's not contextually, it's not necessarily clear whether it means the castle is a flame or like we have today, nice buildings are lit up, right? Probably a flame, but it could be either. What is the story talking about? Remember, it's answering the question, why did God speak to Abraham? Intentionally.
He saw what no one else was seeing. I have a question.
Well, wait. Let me challenge you for a question. He saw what no one else was seeing. The building is a fire. What do you mean no one else is seeing?
Nobody was noticing. Nobody was saying anything about it, but it's just there.
Okay. I think you're getting somewhere there. Everyone saw it, I think.
I think he said, is it possible that there's nobody to look after this castle? So there's some sense of there should be somebody looking after this castle.
Right. So yes, I think he noticed, but I think that the following question, we can all notice that the building is burning. Why isn't anybody doing anything about it? That's the question he asks, right?
It's
So,
the same thing that Moshe asked about the burning
It's undoubtedly so. That's intellectuality. That's not even mentioned. So Barbara said it seems there's a resonance here. It resonates with the burning bush motif, right? That's not coincidence. I don't know. That's really interesting. But the point is clearly thematically, clearly the Midrash is building off that. It does not mention that text, but clearly it's thinking of that text, right? So for Rabbi Sacks, this Midrash is the answer about what it means to be a Jew. To be a Jew is A, to notice the building is burning. B, to say, what is someone doing about this, right? Or why isn't someone doing something about this? And then 3, to engage with the owner, the master of this building, right? So for Rabbi Sacks, the idea is, of course, what is the building? What is the world, right? The world is a flame. The world is on fire. And it's really easy for us to notice the building, but just to pass on by, not to notice, to go another direction. But Abraham was the first person to say, what's going on here? What am I going to do about this? What are we going to do? And so God reaches out from the flames and says to him, I'm here, I'm the master. And in that interaction, implicitly invites us to become partners with him in fixing the world.
Just to be clear, it sounds like you're saying that Abraham was not just anybody. He was in an exceptional place that God didn't randomly choose him. He could see the need. He could see that there was a space in the world of holiness that he wanted to connect to. That's what it sounds like you're saying, or am I maybe reading too much into it?
Yeah, no. I think you're right. I think what you're saying here, Alan said, was that there was something special about Abraham, is that he saw a need for, or he yearned for holiness. He saw that there was something wrong. But there's nothing, it's not genetic. It's not inherent. For whatever reason, he had it, right? And he had it, and that's why he was chosen. But the implication, therefore, is that each and every one of us, if we take time to notice, we too can partner with God. And Jews do tend to notice, right? We do tend to be, at least since the Enlightenment, but even before, and when we've been able to, we do tend to be at the forefront of most social transformations in the world. So there's something about our religious psyche which says we want to partner with God to fix this world.
That's what I was thinking, that it would be sort of, it's how we think of the other times that they talk about humanity. I mean, that there's these lots of openings that you could take it upon yourself, that it's not just the story.
Exactly. That, by the way, that word is exactly the meaning of Hineni is I'm here, ready to take action, to serve. That's exactly what that word means. Perfect. Okay. So,
but Bruce, can I just ask, because you mentioned at the beginning that there were 2 ways of reading Irad Leket.
Yeah.
One way was the burning
yeah.
house, but the other, is there a way to read it?
Right. So the other way, that it's lit up.
Yeah.
It's lit up, but it's empty.
Right.
So that's more. So that's more the philosophical argument from design.
Yeah.
Right. The argument from design is it's the blind watchmaker William Paley, an English theologian and philosopher, talked about. If you find a watch on the floor, we used to have watches. You find a phone on the floor, right? You don't assume that the phone had just assembled itself and that someone made the phone and left it there, right? So the analogy, Maimonides talks about this as well. The analogy is that there's this beautiful castle, this beautiful building. It's all lit up. There's no one home. So Abraham said, well, there must be an owner. There must be a builder. This didn't happen by chance. So that's the other interpretation. But Rabbi Sacks prefers the burning bit because he said, clearly the world is burning. The world is really burning. Right? And it's our job to do something about it, to partner with God. And because it's odd, because again, I'm going to try and avoid spending all night on this midrash, but it's really odd, isn't it? Because of course, what would be the obvious question to ask the owner?
Why are you letting it burn?
Right. Why are you letting it burn? My image is, and if you look at the Hebrew, again, we can't do this, but it's so interesting because it said, if you look at the Hebrew, the Hebrew is HaLev HaLev Bal Habira, and HaLev means to glance, to like it's very weird. It's a very weird phrase. What does it mean? He glanced out at him. So I always had the image of like God's in the building, the owner's in the building. But actually, the owner is like calling out, "I'm the owner. I'm the owner." But again, what does that mean? That's like heretical, isn't it? What do you mean? Well, what it means is, whatever it means, is that for somehow, when God brings himself into this world, he makes himself vulnerable. And he needs, quote unquote, us to help him out. Now, why he makes himself vulnerable, how that works, and how that makes sense with our conception of an almighty God, I don't know. But this midrash implies that God needs our help. He can't put out the fire on his own. Theologically, that's complicated, and not for now. But the implication is clear. This midrash is radical. God is the owner of the building, and it's on fire, and it's clearly can't put it out on his own. Yeah.
This reminds me of the rock opera Tommy, where the guy is blind when Tommy goes and see me, hear me, follow me. Did you ever see?
No.
No.
What is this?
A rock? It's actually it's the Who. Yeah, it's an early rock opera.
Oh yeah, no, I have heard of it.
Yes, and that's what he says in this.
We're now talking about the rock opera from the Who. Okay. Of which I don't really know. I'm going to be careful. I'm going to be careful. I'm going to say like it might be a little bit before my time. Oh, okay, sorry. There is I'll just tell you a little story. I used to teach obviously in schools, and I remember once upon a time that I would often use that film from that movie from the year 2000s, the late 90s, called The Matrix. I don't know if you remember that movie. So like it continues to be a brilliant, deep, wonderful movie. And I was quoting it to these sort of like teenagers and talking about it. And I said, and I stopped and I realized, you don't know what this movie is, do you? And then I realized they hadn't been born when it came out, let alone they hadn't seen it. They weren't even born. So, right. I did tend to, it definitely came back. I did tend to give them homework and said, you have to watch it. Okay, let's move on. So, okay. Famous verse, which said, let's move to source 7. Let's move to source 7. Famous verse, which is a little bit later on. Ki varech avarcha v'harbe arbe et zarcha kof be'hashamayim v'kol asher al sfat hayam ve'yarosh zarcha et sha'ar oivav. I will multiply your descendants like the stars of the heaven and the sand of the seashore, and you will. And your seed will inherit the gates of his enemy. So what does it mean? As Jewish people, we are compared to the stars and to the sand. Why both? The stars and the sand. If you've heard that analogy, the stars and the sand, right?
stars you can't see during the day and the same you can see at night.
Okay, very nice. Very nice.
Could you repeat it?
Yeah, Barbara said, you don't have to sit here.
Yeah.
Barbara said that the sand you can't see at night and the stars you can't see in the day.
Both are infinite.
Both are, well, they're not infinite, but they're very, very, very large. Right. And the heavens, the heavens and the earth. Okay, but interestingly, the Talmud says something a little bit different. Look at the Talmud, right? Talmud said, "I will multiply your seed like the stars of the heaven and the sands of the seashore."
Turn this a little bit more towards you so I can see.
I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. It's fine.
I will multiply the Talmud source 8. I will multiply your seed like the stars of the heaven and the sand on the seashore. Rabbi Yehuda Bar Eli explained, this people is compared to dust and to the stars. When it sinks to the dust, but when it rises to the stars. So that's not quite as complimentary as we have interpreted it. It's interesting. And again, that's one interpretation, but the Talmud is saying that we have this awesome responsibility. We're descended from Abraham and Isaac and Jacob and Sarah and Rachel. But we have tremendous potential. We can also sink very, very low, right? We could also sink. We have the dual. So that's a challenge. We're not genetically supermen, right? We have the potential to be great. We have the potential, like everyone else, to be very bad. And again, that's to recognize this fact, which is a challenge to us. Rabbi Sacks loves this midrash because it's telling us, who are we going to be? Are we going to be like the people that walk past the burning building and say someone else's problem? Or even worse, pour gas, for fuel on the fire? Or are we going to be those people that seek to put out the flames, or at least a little bit of the flames, some of the flames? We're doing our little bit. Because, as we know, the famous verse from Isaiah, source 9, I am the Lord, I've called you to righteousness. I will take hold of your hand. I will keep you and make you to be a covenant for the people and a light for the nations, to open eyes that are blind, to free captives from prison, and to release from the dungeon those who sit in darkness. It's a very, very profound and difficult verse to read right now. Very difficult verse to read right now. But clearly this is, metaphorical. The idea is that our job is to bring light into the world, is to fight oppression and evil. And again, so Rabbi Sacks is challenging us and saying, these are our core texts. Let's source 10. Albert Einstein, who was not a religious Jew, but he did have a really interesting take on spirituality. Yeah. Right? Again, he was not a religious man, but he clearly marveled at the universe. And whatever he thought the source of that was, I don't know. But he certainly was not traditionally religious. The pursuit of knowledge for its own sake, source 10, an almost fanatical love of justice and the desire for personal independence. These are the features of the Jewish tradition which make me thank my stars that I belong to it. Right? And I got to keep on coming back to this. I mean, it's funny. I'm just seeing this in such a different light. I've taught this many times, but I'm thinking, like, someone I felt really encapsulated what's wrong with the debate and the dialogue right now. So did you see the Oscars? Right. So there was some controversy there. I mean, pretty normal Oscars actually. No one got slapped. But some stars were wearing red pins for Gaza, and then the guy that made the Holocaust film made a speech which was disturbing for many. Renouncing, and he used an odd word, but like renouncing his Judaism, or I can't remember what word it wasn't quite renouncing, but he's you saying that the Holocaust shouldn't be used to justify what Israel is doing. And so someone posted a meme the other day, so I happen to know, basically putting a picture of the Oscars statue in a Sikh Heil, with on the golden thing with a mustache and with a Hamas green headband. So the idea is that image was what happened at the Oscars. They're Hitler. They're Nazis, right? It's ridiculous. Right? Many people don't like, maybe fundamentally disagree, but they're not Nazis. Right? They're not Hitler. Right? Like, he may be misguided. I may disagree with him, his speech, but he just made a Holocaust movie. And as I'm reading this, for me, it's like, look, we're going to have Jews on both sides of this discussion right now because this is who we are as a people. Because we can't get away from our search for justice. And the Palestinians are in a very, very, very oppressed place. Right? So Jews are going to demonstrate on behalf, are going to do, going to be part of these, of Israel's most vicious and strident critics. But I think it comes back down to this, because we always fight for justice. Now, many of us will disagree with their definition of justice, but I think it's coming from, I do think it's coming from a good place. That's why and literally, I am only realizing this right here and right now, reading this verse, right? They're not evil. I think I personally believe they're fundamentally misguided. As I said to my son, who was not quite is a white colonialist, fascist state, but was very disturbed at the beginning. I pointed out to him that if it wasn't for the IDF and we had been there, they would kill us too. We were there. They would have no problem to massacre the lot of us. Everyone you know. Right? So it's a horrible, horrible situation. But if we don't defend ourselves, they will kill us. All of us. And it hasn't changed. Okay. I didn't think we were going to go down this route. I probably should have realized that this would take us down this route. But okay. 11. Each of us Jews knows how thoroughly ordinary he is. Yet taken together, we seem caught up in things great and inexplicable. The number of Jews in the world is smaller than a small statistical error in the Chinese census. It's a famous idea. Yet we remain bigger than our numbers. Big things seem to happen around us and to us. Again, there's something metaphysical about this, but not as the individual Jew, as the Jewish people, to be part of this collective idea. And we're not going to get into it, and you haven't asked me to talk about this, but Rabbi Sacks got into a lot of trouble. I should tell you this. He's got into a lot of trouble when he pointed out in his book in 2002, The Dignity of Difference. He pointed out in that book, it's well worth reading it, and you won't be able to get a hold of the first edition because it's very, very, very expensive. But you can read the second edition. You can find out online what he said in the first edition. He said in the first edition that every religion, he said it in here, in our piece, he said it here, like, he doesn't think we're special than anyone else. But he said in The Dignity of Difference that every people, every religion, every culture has a path, their own path to God. So this is our path to God. But that has all sorts of philosophical implications about truth and ultimate truth. And he got into a lot of trouble with some people in the UK and Israel for saying that. And then
it's self-evident.
But if you hold that Judaism is true and is ultimate truth, then how can you say that Christianity and Islam and Hinduism and Buddhism have access to the truth?
They have a portion of the truth, and they have a portion of the truth.
Okay.
Yeah, so just Kaplan said something very similar to other people also
Have revelations or
revelation.
Yeah. So I didn't quite say that, but again, the implication was there. But I don't know. I don't know if Kaplan, we were quoting Kaplan here. I don't know if Mordecai Kaplan. I bet it was controversial when he said it then as well. In the 1930s.
But that is,
that
is books burned. That was
right.
So yeah, I just thank you. I just want to throw in here that, right, Kaplan is famous for rejecting chosenness. I don't know if you can hear me over there. Kaplan is famous for rejecting chosenness. Oh, okay. And he also wrestled with the question that we're talking about tonight his whole life, because he realized that even as he rejected chosenness, he also needed to articulate a specific purpose for the Jewish people. And it was an interesting tension. And I think the last book that he wrote was called The Religion of Ethical Nationhood. And it was his attempt to, I would say, reconstruct the concept of chosenness in a framework that did not carry the same kind of what he would probably term bias. And it would have been really interesting. I don't know if Rabbi Sacks and Mordechai Kaplan ever met one another. I suspect they didn't, but would have been an interesting conversation between the two.
I'm sure Rabbi Sacks read Mordechai Kaplan.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah.
So what does it mean to be chosen? What does it mean to be part of this people? Yes.
We're chosen to gather all the Muslim nations together at a point where Saudi Arabia and other nations were going to have agreements with Israel. Was the point when Hamas attacked, the idea to make that not happen, again, across ages as things happen, and there are reactions against it.
Right.
I mean, looking real politique at this. I mean, that was time. I mean,
yes. I mean, look, it's very difficult to know, and we're way too close to know how and why and what. We're just suffering right now. We're all suffering, right? We're all suffering. We're all deadly afraid and worried and fearful. So we've just got to get through this and keep working on it. But I don't have any easy answers as to why. No, that's right. But let's look at source 12. Rabbi Sacks said, long ago, one man and one woman heard a calling telling them to leave their land, their birthplace, and their father's house and begin a journey. There was nothing conspicuous about them, nothing to suggest that the path on which they were about to embark would eventually change the history of humankind. The man was not a military hero or a miracle worker. He was not a revolutionary or a guru with thousands of followers. He had absolutely nothing in common with the heroes of epic or myth. Yet there can be no doubt that he was the most influential human being that lived. Today, 2.2 billion Christians, 1.3 billion Muslims, and 13 million Jews, more than half of the 6 billion, not 8 billion, but probably the numbers are probably, the percentage is pretty similar, claim descent, biological or spiritual, from him. His name was Abraham. The name of the woman, his wife, was Sarah. What was special new about Abraham was not so much the God he worshipped. According to the Hebrew Bible, Abraham was not the first monotheist. Adam was. What Abraham initiated was the idea of a faith as a journey undertaken by a people in search of a promised land. What an astonishing phrase. What an astonishing phrase, right? There's something about a journey that we're on. What? Because remember, the title, we don't want to forget what we're supposed to be talking about. We are, which is why be Jewish? Because we're part of this special nation, but it's on a journey. We have not yet reached the destination. We haven't arrived. Obviously the reconstitution and the reestablishment of the state of Israel in our land was a momentous occasion and remains a miraculous and momentous event, but it's still not the end of the journey. I don't know if I quoted this here, but Rabbi Sacks famously says, I don't think he said it in that video, is that when we're asked, has the Messiah come? We always answer, not yet. Not yet. Yes.
I'm a little confused here. We were taught, I was taught, the big thing about Abraham was he was the first guy to promote monotheism, and it was a land of many gods, and he said at least ours is the top God, and then eventually they got to monotheism. When we claim that the Christians and Muslims are the spiritual heirs also of Abraham, is that saying that they all have that covenant with God, or is that saying that they're all monotheists?
Right. So Allah is again asking the question about if the Christians and Muslims are descended spiritually from Abraham, are they part of the covenant? Does that say? So the traditional answer is no. They have a connection, but they're not part of the covenant. As you know, throughout the stories of the Bible, one son got chosen and the other got put aside. And midrashically, the idea that Ishmael is the descendant, is the ancestor of the Muslim nations, and that Esau is the ancestor, according to rabbinic imagination, of Rome. Esau is known as Edom, which is known as Rome. Again, we're not going to go into that, but the idea is there's connections, but they weren't ultimately the line through which the covenant flows. Because, well, for lots of reasons. First of all, they themselves believe in that connection. So clearly, Christians have the Old Testament and the New Testament. The Muslims have the Quran, but the Quran includes many of the stories from the Torah and from the Bible, and also from actually Midrashim. So actually, there's an interesting Midrashim. It could even be that some of these Midrashim that we're talking about are in the Quran. I mean, because clearly Muhammad was heavily influenced by the Jews around him in Medina, and clearly there was a strong Jewish influence. That's why Islam is so similar to Judaism. Many of the prayer and dietary laws and charity and facing one way to pray, like it's clearly connected. So I think that's why so I think Rabbi Sacks, when he was saying about the different pathways to God, was alluding to this fact that they also have a relationship with God. But that's quite controversial in traditional Jewish theology, of them being rejected. But he under the surface, and sometimes not so under the surface, said some radical things. Yes.
Thought for a long time that a Jewish establishment has been overly focused on Jewish continuity without substance to that Jewish continuity. I feel personally that Jewish continuity is not something I really care about. Like, I care about whether my kids or grandkids are somewhat Jewish, because Judaism means something to me. But I don't care whether Judaism exists 30,000 years down the road. I just don't, or even 5 generations from now. And I sometimes feel very alone in this project of this feeling because this Jewish establishment has been so focused on Jewish continuity, Jewish continuity, Jewish continuity, and maybe it's that what's missing is why be Jewish?
For what?
Yeah,
Exactly. So 1 minute again, sorry. Louise is saying, hang on, she's concerned, tell me if I'm interpreting what you're saying right, is that she's concerned that we focus so much on Jewish continuity and having Jewish children and grandchildren, etc. But for what purpose? Like just to have more Jews. I mean, what is that? Who cares? Obviously we care because we're part of the Jewish people, but ultimately who cares? So I think what you're saying is that you like what Rabbi Sacks is saying is because he's telling us why we need to have more Jews, right? As opposed to just have more Jews. Now, Rabbi Sacks deliberately did this. Rabbi Sacks, when he started out in 1991 as the Chief Rabbi in the UK, his first decade, one of his earliest books was Will We Have Jewish Grandchildren? will we have Jewish grandchildren? Because he was looking at the UK at the time, like America, and seeing rampant assimilation and saying, if we carry on this way, there will be no Jews. But it was, and then he wrote all these other books to say, well, why is that important? Why don't we just assimilate? Who cares? As I said, like, it's a nice society. It's a good place. Why be Jewish? And this, we're going to talk about this in more detail next week. The point which is that if clearly we bring something unique to the world, and if there are no longer Jews, the world would be tremendously impoverished. That doesn't mean to say that other people don't bring important things as well. As we're going to see next week, the home we build together, Rabbi Sacks says everyone has to come with their unique, proud, authentic selves to the common space. But what that means is there's a challenge to us and our children, our grandchildren. It's a, really amazing thing that you're doing. Producing a Haggadah. Is trying to tell the next generation that there's a reason to be Jewish. There's something special about this. It's not to the exclusion of everyone else. I'm doing my doctorate, you very kindly mentioned, and I love the fact that it used to be that in my bio I'm completing my doctorate, but the reality was I wasn't doing anything with it. I'd been completing it for 7 years, but now I'm actually doing something about it, right? So actually, like, I'm almost there. I'm booking the research in, and please God, by the end of the year, I will have completed my doctorate. Wow. My doctorate is in a very obscure area. I'm doing it through the Central Connecticut State University. I used to live in Connecticut, and that's where I started 7 years ago. I'm doing it on early career Talmud teachers in Jewish day schools. Their experiences of teaching this really hard text to modern teenagers. What is it like? As you can imagine, at Central Connecticut State University, no one's ever done a dissertation on the Talmud. And yet, they love it and are fascinated for all sorts of reasons. But like it's for me in my life, it's a little example of, hey, let's bring our unique experiences to the table. But this education department is really fascinated by what goes on in Jewish day schools, teaching Talmud. Not that any one of them in public schools in Connecticut is ever going to teach Talmud. That doesn't matter. What matters is that there's something unique, but is also universalizable that we can bring and teach the world. And if Jeremy Bruce wasn't doing his doctorate, a whole bunch of professors and cohort members and others would never have heard of the Talmud or never understand what this thing is. So my supervisor's like, he's learning all this stuff about the Talmud. It's great, he said. And that's a small example of that, of what we can do. When we come to the public square, we'll talk more about this next week, as proud, authentic Jews. So, wow, this is like gone very, very, gone very quick. So let's go to source 15, the last source. For 40 centuries, Jews have held tenaciously to the belief that we have been charged with a sacred mission to sanctify life by being God's ambassadors to a world that has all too often worshipped the multiple forms of what Nietzsche called the will to power. We were called on to write a different story that tells of the beauty of holiness and the call of compassion, to tame the savageness of man and to make gentle the life of this world. Judaism has placed at the center of its striving some of the most healing of all sacred imperatives: the importance of love and loyalty, marriage and the sacred bonds between husband and wife, parent and child, education in the life of the mind, justice, equity, and the rule of law. Compassion, charity, and human dignity, the bonds of belonging and community, memory, history, and imperishable hope. We seek God not just in the remote heavens or the innermost recesses of the soul, but in ordinary life, with its pleasures and pains, fears and hopes, conflicts and fragments of heaven and consolations. Judaism believes not in abandoning earth for the sake of heaven, but in bringing fragments of heaven down to earth, in simple deeds and celebrations. For that is where God is found, not in wealth, power, fame, successes, or any other kind of myriad substitutes for life, still less in violence and terror, but in life itself, living, breathing. Neshama, the Hebrew word for soul, means breathing. Loving, giving, caring, praying, praising, giving thanks, defeating tragedy in the name of hope, and death in the name of life. Our task is to be true to our faith and a blessing to others. A blessing to others because we are true to our faith. To be a Jew is to bring redemption, one day at a time, one act at a time. Every mitzvah, every kind word or deed, every act of sharing what we have with others brings the divine presence into the world. By recognizing the image of God in other people, we help to remake the world in the image of God. So these are very beautiful and challenging words, and they speak to us and they haunt us right now. They haunt us right now. But that is what I think Rabbi Sacks would want us to do, is to struggle with this. But to understand, nevertheless, that we are here with a purpose, and that it is vitally important, ultimately important, that we carry on doing what we do as a people. We carry on our mission. So I set out to give you some insight into Rabbi Sacks' ideas of why be a Jew. I hope I've given you some of those insights this evening. Forgive us for the technology. We're going to do a better job next week.
Yeah.
But I do hope that everyone, both at home and here, have got a small insight into Rabbi Sacks' passionate explanations of why we should all be Jewish.
Thank you. Kevin and Sue, would you stay on for a couple of minutes? I want to see if we can figure out what's going on, at least with the mics. If you would, could you stay a couple of minutes, Rabbi Bruce, just to see, and then that's one piece. If we could get those mics working, that would be really helpful for next week. So, okay, great. Well, thank you so much. It was very rich conversation, presentation, lots to think about, and look forward to next week, This House We Build Together. Okay. All right, so let's see. Let's try plugging this thing back in and see if
I'm going to stop recording.
Yeah, great. Oh, thank you.